If you're sitting there thinking, haven't you ranked the captains before, Agamotto? Yes, I have. Twice. Once after the Soul Society arc and once after the Arankar arc, since people wanted to know how my rankings changed over time. And now that I've finished the manga, it seems like this may be my final ranking of them, at least for the foreseeable future. Maybe at some point I'll do a big tier list of everyone who's ever been called a captain, including like Aizen and Gin. Anyone that's ever worn a white robe. Maybe I'll do that at some point, but for now, this is my final ranking, at least where I'm at the end of the series. So where did the captains end up at the end for me? I knew my captain ranking was going to be very different than my last update because of just how many of these characters were given huge moments and some really interesting development during the 1,000-Year Blood War. I knew in the middle of reading it that some of these characters were definitely going to move up or down the rankings. A few little notes before we start. This will consist of the characters that were captains during the 1,000-Year Blood War and the majority of the final arc. I will not be including characters that were captains in the epilogue time jump since I barely got a chance to see them in those roles, though I'm sure many of them did well, and I am very proud of them. So yes, it'll only be the 13 that were mainly the captains during the war, and this final arc. So let's get to ranking the captains of the 1,000-Year Blood War arc, and see where they ended up for me. At number 13, I have Kensei. I didn't expect to put Kensei at the very bottom when I started, but the more I've been thinking about it, I don't really like him that much. You know when someone seems okay at first, but when you get to know them a little bit, you really just don't vibe with them? That's me and Kensei. Sure, I like that he's a brawler, and I like the Visored in general, so I guess he gets some love by default for that, but I'll tell you what made me a bit of a hater. It was his treatment of Hisagi, specifically. The little we ever learned about Kensei that was separate from Visored trauma was that he saved Kid Hisagi, and because of that, Hisagi looked up to him and got a 69 tattoo because Kensei had one, and he was kind of his idol, his inspiration apparently to be a Soul Reaper. It was this sweet little piece of Bleach history. He was a hero to Hisagi and left an impact that lasted even while he was gone and in exile for 100 years, and when he returns, and Hisagi not only has a chance to fight alongside his hero, but serve as his lieutenant, and then this is how Kensei treats him? You can excuse it as tough love or his naturally tough persona, but it mostly annoys me and makes Kensei less likable for me. But you know what they say, don't meet your heroes, kids, because damn, Hisagi was probably so excited to get to be Kensei's lieutenant. Just imagine that. It's like Batman asked you to be Robin, but then it turns out Batman's a tool that likes to just treat you like crap all the time. Kensei is so needlessly mean to Hisagi, and that's what gets me. It's more than just like strict. He's just straight up being a jerk to a guy that maybe isn't perfect, definitely, but isn't some massive incompetent screw-up either. And sure, it's a bit of a gag, but at the same time, nah, Kensei, you lost me. Maybe it's building to something awesome in Can't Fear Your Own World, but I haven't gotten that far into the light novels yet, so for now, Kensei, last place. Sorry. I love the Visored, I don't really love you. At number 12, I have Soy Phone. This shouldn't be too surprising to anybody that's seen my previous lists. Soy Phone has always been low for me when it comes to my rankings. I don't dislike her really, and I've definitely grown to like her more than I used to, but she just never clicked for me as a personal favorite. She's fine, but I just don't really jive with her personality. And here at the end of the manga, she never climbed out of the bottom tier for me, unfortunately. The stealth vibes are cool, her Bankai being such a display of her true self is great, her relationship with Omaida can be really funny, and her history with Yoriichi is interesting, but I don't know. She's fine, and is perfect for the kind of role she has and the part she has to play, but as far as like a personal favorite, Soy Phone just never became one of those for me, unfortunately, and maybe it's because I still haven't forgotten the role she played with King Barragan's death. I'm only joking, it's fine, I forgive you. Or do I? At number 11, Rose. I like Rose. I like his aesthetics and that he kept a little flair even as a captain. I especially love his mask back when he used to wear it, and more recently, his Bankai, which was super cool, super visually interesting, especially in the anime. Really cool, strange ability. But he was always just too underutilized for me to really grow a strong connection to him, unfortunately. So that's why he's this low. Like with all of the Visored, I just wish we got more than we did, but I've always liked Rose and I still like him, even if I think him and Kensei should have stayed dead. He's a vibe, but we never really got much more than that, unfortunately, so that's why he's so low. But it was nice to see him as a captain again. At number 10, Toshiro Hitsugaya. Captain Hitsugaya is cool enough a lot of the time, but my enjoyment of his character really kinda waned throughout the series. His design is great, his powers are great, and there's some great stuff to unpack when it comes to his age and maturity, which his big moment in the 1,000-Year Blood War manifested very directly in a really cool sequence. I just feel like for someone that's given as much time in the series as Hitsugaya is given, and is given as many fights as he's given, should have amounted to more when it came to his development throughout the story. He felt very static in a lot of ways, and it never led to a lasting crescendo, really. Even seeing him mature is treated as a temporary power boost and not a lasting character-defining evolution. Some of the other most prominent side Soul Reapers eventually had these satisfying emotional arcs, or at least moments that revealed new sides to them or real growth, and Hitsugaya didn't really have that level of resolution. Somewhat fittingly, he never really reached the potential I saw in him, and maybe that's the point. Maybe we're never supposed to see him become the kind of character he can be, or reach the narrative fulfillment he could have had. But even if that's the case, that doesn't really make me like him more. It's an interesting idea, but that's kind of it. It just leaves me with a feeling of mild, cold dissatisfaction. Hitsugaya is cool, but beyond that, I ended up being pretty lukewarm on him overall by the end. He's good, he's just not great. At number 9, I have Komamura. Komamura has never been in the top echelon for me, but he has moved up a bit because of the tragedies that kept piling up on him throughout the series. I didn't know that the giant guy with a basket over his head was going to end up being one of the series' most emotionally damaged characters, but he really went through it throughout the series. His big sacrifice in the 1,000-Year Blood War was so tragic and really brought a lot of the themes of the series to a head, culminating in Komamura giving into his primal urges and fully becoming a beast. It's a sad end for him, but it really worked as the conclusion to the kind of storyline he was part of, and I loved that his journey paralleled Tozen's in some respects, where vengeance turns you more into a beast and never ends how you want it to. It was an important and powerful message, and Komamura was the perfect character to deliver it. He's great, with a phenomenal arc about shame and guilt and revenge, but as far as my personal favorites, he's just not in my top tier. But Komamura is still pretty awesome, and he had some great moments throughout both the series and especially towards the end. When he transformed, when he showed the true nature of his Bankai, a lot of great stuff unraveling this character, and I thought by the time you really broke him down and you got to his final conclusion, it was very tragic, very well handled. I do wish maybe we got a slightly more conclusive ending for him, but maybe the anime will fix that. At number 8, I have Shinji. And I honestly thought Shinji would be higher because I love Shinji, and I'm so glad that he's a captain again in the final arc. So it's a testament to how great the rest of the contenders are that Shinji somehow ended up in 8th. I think maybe what it is he just suffers a bit for the same reasons the other Visored share, and that's how little that he's given later on. The anime tries to alleviate it a little bit and still might be able to do more in the last core of episodes. Hell, we even got to see Shinji's Bankai in the anime, and it was really cool, if not a little wasted on a bunch of foot soldiers, although that's probably where it would work best. Unfortunately, this is where Shinji ended up. I still love all his unique qualities, especially his personality. He's one of the more enjoyable characters in the series to read, and I loved him in Turn Back the Pendulum especially. That's still one of my favorite backstories in Bleach. I just think his character kind of peaked a little in the Arrancar arc for me, but I still love him, and unfortunately he's number 8 because I just grew to love the characters above him even more. At number 7, I have Head Captain Yamamoto. Yamamoto was at the very bottom in my first captain ranking and has risen through sheer power of action and by being an absolute badass, but but also it was the more in-depth look at his character we got in this final arc that really won me over to him. I loved everything about him resisting being the man he used to be, and obviously seeing his Bankai was utterly incredible and one of the highlights of the final arc. So good. There was just something really powerful about an old man that used to be a monster but found it wasn't sustainable and became something else in a time of peace, where his fire didn't have to burn so brightly anymore, and Yuabaha thought, oh, he's gone soft and he's not what he used to be, and yeah, maybe he's not. And I think that was really powerful to show, you know, people can change and people can evolve, and depending on the things they learn over time or the way the world becomes, people change. And Yamamoto did change, and we got just glimpses of who he used to be. And all of that added so much depth to him that showed a glimmer of what was beneath his very, very tough exterior, and his death scene was so powerful and set such a tone for the arc, to the point that I don't know that the Thousand Year Blood War was ever really able to bring back that same level of utter dread again that happened when he died during that whole first invasion. But overall, Yamamoto going from this guy that I thought was just this authoritarian figure who refused to, you know, bend at all, to the point where it was a detriment sometimes to the people he was trying to lead, to learn that maybe there was good reason for that he was, you know, not wanting to risk anyone going off book or acting the way the captains used to act. It was just really insightful, and I loved learning more about him and seeing the softer sides of him, while he also still maintained some of the most utterly badass moments throughout the series. Like, he has some great cold lines that I love. He became one of my favorite characters by the time of his death. I thought he was wonderful by the end. So yeah, that's why he has moved up so much, and unfortunately just couldn't go quite past this point. At number 6, I have Ukitake. You know I've been waiting the whole series for Ukitake to get a chance to shine. I always liked him because he's naturally likable and reasonable when others aren't, but he understandably was often kind of off to the side. His biggest character trait was his mysterious illness that kept him from the spotlight, and the final arc finally delved into a bit of that mystery. Everything that happened when he revealed he had a piece of the Soul King inside him was wild, and gave a whole new perspective on who this man is and what he's been through, and we got to see bits of his history, and the way the anime portrayed his flashbacks in particular was wonderful. Really beautiful, honestly, and he was also apparently incredibly naturally powerful as well, but was kind of also hindered by his illness, obviously, and I love characters like that. It wasn't that he got to have a badass fight or show off his Bankai, which I still would have loved to see, but he was heroic in a way that only he could be, where the illness that's been plaguing him the whole series kind of becomes his strength in a roundabout way, when literally the Soul King's power holding him together all this time helps him hold reality together instead, and it was a powerful moment that cost him his life. I would have loved to have learned even more about kind of the relationship between him and Mimihagi, and maybe the anime will give us that, but with the little changes that have been made to his releasing Mimihagi in the anime, it's kind of up in the air and if the anime will do a little bit more with him, but I think the end result will still be the same, with Ukitake dying by the end of the series. That was a sad loss because he's really one of the kindest Soul Reapers we ever met, but at least he got to go out in a way that wasn't just succumbing to his illness, but doing something truly important. Like I mentioned in my analysis videos, I kind of expected him to die by the end of the series because of his illness, but I'm really glad that he got to have a heroic end and got to finally come off the bench, and I still would have loved to have seen his Bankai, but yeah, Ukitake, he delivered after all this waiting, so loved him, really nice guy, sad he's gone. At number 5, I have Byakuya. Yes, I know, people are probably saying, but Agamotto, I thought you wished Byakuya was dead. Yes, I still wish he actually died against Asnot, but that wasn't personal really, it just felt like the right time to me, and still does. That aside, there's no way Byakuya doesn't make the top 5 after his journey throughout the series. The gradual, subtle shift in him that happened from when he fought Ichigo in the Soul Society arc is so so good, especially with how easy he was to despise at first. He was effective as the stalwart defender of what's supposed to be law, who was even willing to give up a woman that's supposed to be his sister and let her be executed. But it was great to see that crack and for him to find the kind of forgotten humanity beneath. Byakuya is a wonderfully complicated person, hardened by loss and duty and responsibilities that Rukia and Ichigo were able to thaw a little bit, and while he never becomes some easygoing softy, there was so much change in Byakuya's rigidness. Yes, I think he may have slightly overstayed his welcome, and maybe after his miraculous survival he never did anything that really wowed me and made me glad he was back, but at the same time, I'm not mad Byakuya lived. I'm not, I swear. He deserved some happiness and to continue to do what he clearly loved if he was gonna survive, so I've accepted that he didn't die, and I have mostly moved forward, and he was a great character. He was great, and I loved his whole entire arc, and he had one of the best journeys, I think, of any of the characters. At number 4, I have Unohana. I am so happy to put Unohana here at 4. If you watched my previous captain rankings, she was on the very low end because I just kept waiting for her to do something more substantial. She just hadn't, but I kept hoping because you could feel we were waiting to see something from her. You could feel there was something there, I just couldn't figure out what. I thought it was going to be her putting her medical knowledge to use in a cool way in a fight or something, like hitting someone's vitals or dismantling their biological weak points or something. But I was not remotely expecting the extent of what we got with the reveal that Unohana was the original Kenpachi. That was such a chilling, jaw-dropping moment that I never saw coming and led to one of my favorite fights in the whole series as well. And it's not just that she's a Kenpachi, so she's gonna be high on my list. No, it's the magnitude of how much more fascinating her character became after the reveal that can't be overstated. Suddenly, every single scene, every moment of Unohana's character was so much more interesting, and that inkling that she could be more than the maternal healer exploded into something so much more powerful. To have that seemingly kindly figure have started off as one of the most violent characters in the series was so good and made so much sense, and is just one of my favorite reveals in all of Bleach, for sure. And I like that even though she does revert back to her old ways, really she's still trying to be a healer and she's trying to fix Kenpachi in the only way that a Kenpachi can be fixed, through blood, through violence, through a fight. It was really amazing. All of that section of the series I love. And while it would have been nice to see Unohana more after her big reveal, I think the stakes of that Kenpachi fight were appropriately lethal considering who they are as people. And it was beautiful to see the real her and to see Kenpachi Zaraki's relationship with her. The real Unohana was just so fascinating and made her retroactively even more fascinating in every single scene. Like I said, I loved Unohana by the end. And I love the dichotomy of who she is and how she became this way. And similarly to Yamamoto, I love that she was this monster that kind of became something else. And like Yamamoto, had to kind of fall back into that a bit due to war. Yeah, in the end, I just loved Unohana. I think she's easily one of the most interesting captains. At number 3, I have Shunsui, the new head captain. I've always liked Shunsui from early on. He had a casual yet powerful vibe that works with me with a lot of characters and all kinds of stories. He was extremely likable from the start and kept hinting that there was more beneath his hat and pink kimono, whether it was more power or something that went a bit deeper than that. And the development he had in the final arc proved that to be true on both fronts. Not only did he have one of the most visually and conceptually interesting Bankai, but he also turned out to have an engrossing past that revealed that he's one of the most tragic characters in the series, and I loved that so much. I always enjoy when someone so easygoing has actually been through some really traumatic stuff. Not that I enjoy that he went through the traumatic stuff, but that I enjoy that his character has those layers and is hiding something beneath. I especially liked that he literally wears tributes to that heartbreaking past on his person at all times. For a character whose appearance is so important and so memorable, it's great to see that he has those things, not just because he's eccentric or something, but literally those things have so much meaning to him. The Thousand Year Blood War opened up so many windows into who Shunsui really is beneath his pleasant smiles and flower petals, and I also love the arc he went on throughout the whole series, culminating with becoming head captain, as the most easygoing captain ended up having to take on the greatest responsibilities, stepping into a position he never really wanted when that's actually been the story of his life, and despite his trepidation, he always handles what's put on him, every time. I love Shunsui. His mix of likability, tragedy, and unique flair really make him stand out among all of the characters as one of the most effortlessly cool creations of Kubo. Shunsui's great. He really lived up to how cool he seemed at the very beginning. At number 2, the silver medal, we've got Mayuri, and Mayuri might be someone that makes others question your own morality when you say he's one of your favorites, but it's not that I agree with his methods or actions whatsoever, but instead just that Mayuri has remained consistently one of the most entertaining characters in the series, whose unique brand of genius often lays the seeds for some of the most weirdly compelling interactions, and especially fights. He's just so wholly himself and one of the most distinct creations that Kubo has made, with both his personality and his ever-changing design being huge standouts for me. He was massively important to the Thousand Year Blood War and one of its MVPs, honestly, and once we learned the enemy for this arc were Quincy's, I really thought Mayuri's story was leading to him getting some well-deserved comeuppance for his torture of their kind. I thought he'd get strung up and killed by the Quincy's or tortured by the Quincy's. They were gonna get some revenge against him, but that never really came to fruition. He's never punished at all. Hell, I don't think they ever really bring it up. I maybe would have liked for it to come up, but this arc had a lot to cover, so I'll forgive it, but you would think that he would be one of their primary targets, but evidently not. Obviously, as I raved about in my analysis video, I loved the battle alongside Nemu that showed us a few subtle sides to Mayuri and was an incredible part of the Thousand Year Blood War for a variety of reasons that I went into in that video, but the things we saw of him in that fight in particular were a big part of why it's so great. And what I love about Mayuri, and that only became more clear as we reached the end, is that Kubo never ever tries to redeem this lunatic. He never tries to excuse Mayuri's behavior or justify them in any way outside of Mayuri's own twisted explanations that are hardly a defense. Mayuri doesn't really care about defending his actions. Kubo lets Mayuri be bad, even when he's helping, even when he's doing what seems like potentially necessary things. But while those things may seem necessary in the moment, he never paints Mayuri as some hero, and the only flicker of sympathy and humanity is just that, a flicker that vanished as quickly as it arrived in a powerful moment before it was naturally overtaken by Mayuri's ambitions and plans, where he quickly reverts back to the guy we know. But just the flicker was enough to really add a lot of depth to him. Mayuri is a despicable, horrifying person, but remained a wonderful character that only became even more entertaining and more fascinating in the final arc. But even then, Mayuri Kuretsuchi still was never able to usurp the number 1 spot on my list and in my heart, because number 1, as always, belongs to Kenpachi Zaraki. Was there ever any doubt? Ever? Really? Kenpachi Zaraki has been my favorite character in Bleach for a very long time, and he has only continued to become more awesome and even miraculously more layered during the Thousand Year Blood War, as the story arc for him that I've been waiting for so long finally came back around. It was set up from his initial appearances that he didn't have a relationship with his sword, and that point had kind of been left dangling, and I kept waiting for it to come back around, and it finally did in the war when he hears his sword, realizes his lieutenant was his Zanpakuto spirit, and we finally got to see his Shikai and Bankai, so naturally him unlocking new powers also finally brought even more hype to the series, because that's what Kenpachi Zaraki does, and that's what he's best at, is just generating hype for me and making me excited and making me so entertained whenever I watch him fight. He killed 3 Sternritter back to back. He got to have a bloody duel with Unohana that was super emotionally impactful and insightful. He sliced a meteor in half with his Shikai. He overpowered imagination itself. He unleashed his Bankai. It was just almost endless Kenpachi hype. But hey, it's a war with a lot of carnage. Of course, my boy Kenny would be thriving in that. He always shines for me, but he's shown more brightly than ever since we got to peel back layers of his character without losing any of the aura that he naturally gives off. There was a risk that explaining him too much, or that showing kind of more sympathetic sides to him and showing more of his internal self maybe could have diluted him a bit, maybe could have softened him too much. But no, Kubo strikes a balance where what's inside of him is still kind of just more of the same. He's just having fun, and I always had fun when I was reading Kenpachi, when I was watching Kenpachi. He's just a great character, and I don't think there was ever any way, unless he really fumbled at some point, that he was ever going to be dethroned as my #1 favorite captain in Bleach. And that'll do it. That's my captain ranking after finishing the manga. I hope you enjoyed. I'd love to hear your rankings below. I'm glad you guys had me do updates throughout the series because it did really change a lot. That's the big thing. It really, I mean, yes, Kenpachi stayed the same, Mayori stayed the same, but a lot in between changed a great deal. I did not think I would have, Unohana so high or Yamamoto so high. And yes, some people were able to break free of my initial thoughts on them for sure. So yeah, it was a lot of fun to do these. If you want to support the channel, please comment, like, subscribe, join the Patreon if you'd like, which we have a lot of manga read-alongs and anime reactions. Yeah, that'll do it for now. Take care. Bye.